welcome. Welcome to the launch of maybe the most inspiring environmental protection project I have ever heard of. And I'm in this for nearly 30 years. My name is Dirk Steffens, and I'm standing here far north of the polar circle in a little village called New-Orleans. And this is a place of research. This is an international research station. And just this morning, I've been out with two researchers. We were catching algae, diatom algae. And these little guys are very, very special because they feed on sunlight and they are the base of the food chain here in the Arctic. So everything from mussels over fish to walruses, seals, polar bears, and even humans depend on these little guys are flourishing in the Arctic Ocean. And this is a very fine example how important biodiversity is for life in Earth in general, how important it is to continue our human civilization. And I'm happy to say that we will talk to people from all over the world here today. We will have voices from the United States of America, from the UK, from Germany, France, and I hope so live from Africa as well. So it's a global idea and this is a global launch. So welcome to everybody. And the first keynote I'm proud to present comes from a man who's very well known as a famous actor and a splendid musician. And his name is Idris Elba.
Hi there. We all need nature. We depend on it for clean air, fresh water and healthy food. But every day we put these benefits at risk. We're destroying nature. And if we don't turn things around quickly, we will pay the price. It's why I'm honored to serve on the board of Conservation International, and it's why I'm so delighted to help support the launch of the Legacy Landscape Fund. Now, the Legacy Landscape Fund has the right partners and the right approach. At the end of the day, no organization can ride on its own. Businesses, governments, non-profits, indigenous and local communities, we need everyone to work together to protect nature and meet the needs of the people on the ground. The LLF does all of this while providing support for important places for the long term. And that's the key. We can't just protect these places for the next few years. We need to protect them and give people an incentive to protect forever. On behalf of Conservation International, I want to thank the French and German governments, as well as all the other partners who are making LLF possible. Thank you for protecting the nature that we all depend on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Idris Elba. And now we would like to show you a film that sums up the idea of the Legacy Landscapes Fund, explains the concept of biodiversity to us and why it is under threat.
Our survival rests on nature. Without clean water, clean air, healthy forests, and a rich biodiversity, we are lost. Yet we continue to mistreat nature. The world today faces three crises that are connected: the loss of biodiversity, climate change, and zoonotic diseases. Together, they put humanity at risk. We're losing natural habitats with breathtaking speed. Every 4 seconds, one soccer field of forest is lost, and every 11 minutes, another species goes extinct. This accelerates climate change. It destroys the natural infrastructure our lives depend on, supplying us with food, rainfall, medicine, and countless other services. And it increases the likelihood of new epidemics. The corona pandemic has made it ever more obvious. Healthy people need a healthy planet. We have to act, and we have to act fast. Scientists are urging us to put at least 30% of the planet's lands and oceans under protection by 2030. If we do this right, the effects will be impressive. 500 gigatons of carbon stocks could be secured. 9 out of 10 threatened species could be saved. Economies would also profit greatly. The benefits would outweigh the costs by a factor of at least 5 to 1. But today, there are not enough protected areas. Coverage stands at 16%, and many of the existing ones don't have anywhere near the funding they need to be managed effectively. By ensuring that protected areas are solidly and sustainably financed, we can safeguard a significant share of the Earth's biodiversity. The Legacy Landscapes Fund aims to do just that. It provides sustainable finance for some of the world's most important landscapes. It builds on strong partnerships with authorities and conservation NGOs, and it integrates the people in and around the protected areas, respecting their rights and needs.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Germany, the Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development, Minister Gerd Müller. Good to have you here, Mr. Müller. The film has shown us vividly what challenges we are facing right now. So to start with, the most important and greatest questions of all, can our planet still be saved?
Thank you so much. Hi, Dirk. To Spitsbergen, best regards, and it's a great pleasure have you. See you in a lot of wonderful places. I was there 2 years ago. Yeah. Yes, that's why we are here today with all these friends all over the world. We can and we have to save our planet. That is our responsibility. That's the message from today. But we have to hurry. We have to hurry. Every 11 minutes, an animal or plant species is lost forever. Every year we lose 10 million hectares of rainforest. You can see me behind me is the Amazonas rainforest, or the Congo, or in Indonesia. That is incredible. Every year we lose 10 million hectares. The message is clear. We have to protect the last habitats for plants and animals, also to protect ourselves, because healthy people can only exist on a healthy planet. And that is why we are launching today the Legacy Landscape Fund today. What a great project. Thank you.
Minister Müller, I have to admit, I would really be rather in a rainforest right now, because it's really cold up here. And I see a storm is coming in, and I'm afraid to be blown off this rooftop very soon. So that comes my next question. This idea, One Health, is based on the understanding that human, animal, and environmental health are closely linked. They are all connected. Because of COVID-19, every layperson now knows what a zoonosis is. An infection transmitted between humans and animals. And in fact, 75% of the new infectious diseases are zoonoses. So it's a really big problem. So the pathogens, they often come from wild animals, mostly from wild animals, and that happens when we come into contact with them, when we enter their habitat, right?
That's right. And that is what we have to understand in business, economy, but even in politics. Today, we are facing 3 global challenges. We all at the same time, all over the world. That is the loss of biodiversity, the climate change, and the COVID-19 pandemic. And COVID-19 pandemic is partly as a result of the exploitation of nature. We have to think about this. If we continue to destroy ecosystems, the direct contact between animals and humans will increase, and this sets the stage for the next pandemic. But we can avoid this. Stopping the loss of biodiversity, protecting habitats, protecting the climate, using more sustainable production methods, stop deforestation. But the trend is going in the wrong direction. We are not slowing down the loss of biodiversity, we are accelerating it. Today, the extinction of species happens 100 times faster than it would be without human influence. We have to stop the loss of biodiversity now. And that means stop the burning of rainforests, not only in Brazil. I visited rainforest in Congo and even in Indonesia Malaysia, and so on. Close illegal wildlife markets, protect the last treasures of nature. Over the long run, well-managed protected areas that closely involve local people are the best method to preserve biodiversity. So far, only 16% of all land areas and only 8% of all marine areas are protected. That is not enough. 30% of all land and marine areas would be necessary, and many of these areas are underfunded. Our answer is today, with you, with all of you, the Legacy Landscape Fund. The aim is to secure permanent, reliable basic funding for at least 13 of the outstanding protection areas in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Germany has played a major role in establishing the fund and is providing a start funding of $100 million. This ministry, the German government, 100 million. Private foundations are contributing another $35 million. Till now, that's only the start today. With that funding, the fund will be able to start in 7 protected areas. The fund aims at building a capital stock of $1 billion by 2030 in order to secure guaranteed long-term core funding for 30 protected areas. This would make the fund the world's largest nature conservation foundation. I invite private and public donors to join us. We need to act now. Thank you all for your support. Thanks.
Gerd, one more question. I know you've been to almost every country in Africa, but what did you come up with the idea to start the LLF?
Yeah, it started really in Africa, this wonderful continent. Till now, I visited 44 of these 54 wonderful countries. So the biggest threat to biodiversity is the dramatic loss of natural habitats, and that you can see even in African countries, of course. And that is why we have to safeguard the remaining nature reserves. In 2021, my ministry is therefore, beside this fund, investing 600 million euro in biodiversity conservation. But more funding is needed, and therefore, today, we start this Legacy Landscape Fund to mobilize new funding in a new and innovative way. Thank you for your engagement, especially Dirk Steffens.
Thank you so much. I'm honored. Thank you, Minister Müller. And now let's talk about the funding. You mentioned some of the aspects of the funding already, Gerd, but species conservation affects us all, not only the governments. And that's why we all have to help. We need every hand. And we will now hear from some of the private partners why they are contributing to the LLF. We have notes, we have greeting notes from Robert and Melanie Walton, from Harvey Feinberg and Peter Baldwin.
Hello. Rob and I are passionate about the importance of protecting nature. We believe that people and the earth need to be in balance and that we are all connected by the planet we share. We are excited to partner with the Legacy Landscapes Fund to demonstrate a new model of long-term support for the conservation that benefits people and nature. Right now, some of the most special and vulnerable places on our planet need our help.
These legacy landscapes are home to incredible biodiversity, but often lack the long-term funding necessary to protect threatened species and sustain local communities. The Legacy Landscape Fund addresses that urgent need for financial resources through an innovative partnership between public and private funders. These collaborations will conserve critical land and ocean ecosystems and help indigenous people and local communities steward our natural world for the benefit of all.
Rob and I are proud to be part of this effort. A world without nature would be one devoid of all that sustains us and the wonder and inspiration that feeds our souls. Working together, we can reduce the loss of biodiversity, restore the resilience of these wild places, and protect the health of the planet upon which every life depends.
As private donors, we believe this collaborative approach to conservation represents a great opportunity to confront the loss of biodiversity. Melanie and I know from experience that the right partnerships, taken with support from governments, private foundations, and communities, are helping nature recover. Through the Legacy Landscapes Fund, we are working with the nonprofit African Parks to provide long-term support to Iona National Park in Angola, an incredible park located within one of the largest transfrontier conservation areas in the world. We're also partnering with African parks to safeguard biodiversity in Odzala-Kokua National Park in Congo, one of Africa's oldest national parks.
Each of us has the power to help protect some of the world's most treasured places, but no one can do this work alone. Now is a time for strong actions and financing to conserve biodiversity and protect the ecosystems we depend on.
As donors interested in these issues, we're grateful to the Legacy Landscapes Fund for this opportunity for partnership. Thank you.
The Legacy Landscapes Fund is a bold, far-sighted public-private partnership to conserve important natural areas around the world. We at the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation are honored to join with the Wyss Foundation, the Rob and Melanie Walton Foundation, the Arcadia Fund, the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the German Development Bank in this historic initiative. Protected areas provide vital ecosystem services and preserve biodiversity around the world. Despite their global significance, protected areas in the developing world receive less than 10% of the world's investment to manage, monitor, and maintain their protection. This is exactly the problem that Legacy Landscapes Fund is designed to overcome. This effort is exactly in line with the mission of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, where our founders wanted us to assure long-term positive outcomes for future generations. We are honored to be part of the Legacy Landscapes Fund.
Hello, I'm Peter Baldwin from the Arcadia Fund. We are seeing a catastrophic loss of the world's biodiversity. We're in a race to secure the last surviving pristine habitats. They need protecting, but we need to make sure this protection is long-lasting. Vision and patience are key. It's reassuring to see public-private partnerships such as the Legacy Landscape Fund take an ambitious long-term approach. At Arcadia, we share this goal. We are delighted to support the collaboration between the Legacy Landscapes Fund and the Wildlife Conservation Society for the Loisa ecosystem. This fragile habitat of critically endangered species such as tigers, elephants, rhinos, and orangutans will be given a chance to thrive. We applaud the commitment shown by the founders of the fund and the leadership shown by the Bundesministerium für wirtschaftliche Zusammenarbeit und Entwicklung. Lisbeth and I look forward to working with you and our long-standing partners, such as the Wildlife Conservation Society, to protect the world's remaining land and seascapes now and in the future.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really excited because we are trying to connect live here from the freezing Arctic to the heart of Africa. So I'm calling in Zimbabwe, Prudence Ndaivani. She is a ranger. She's working in the Gonarezu National Park, Zimbabwe. Prudence, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and I'm so jealous, you know, it's so cold here. My fingers are already white. It's freezing cold up here, and I see you sitting there in the heart of Africa, and I would really love to be there with you now.
You should come visit sometime.
I will. We have an appointment now, and everybody heard it already, Prudence. So, tell me, you are working in the Gonarezhou National Park. What are your duties there? What are you doing?
Well, I'll start with taking you back a bit. My name is Prudence Ndavani, and I'm from Chipinda village, just across this river you're seeing behind me. I was born there, and I'm a procurement officer of the Gonarezhou Conservation Trust. My main duty is to procure goods and services for the various units of the organization. And I do that by ensuring that they have all the raw materials and all the inputs that they need for their day-to-day activities for the smooth running of the park.
So, Prudence, I know you've lived and worked in the Gonarezhou Park for many, many years. So you're some kind of eyewitness. What has changed over the last years? What has changed to the better?
Well, yes, you're right. I've been here for a long time. My father worked in the park until his retirement. I've seen an increase in the number of people that are being employed by the park from the local communities. 75% of our staff right now come from the local communities surrounding Gonarezhou National Park. And that has been a positive for us because we are able to take care of our families and also support our communities and also better our future.
And what are the threats currently? Because you know the park so well. Please tell us.
I do. I would say there are lack of opportunities in the communities. And this then causes an over-reliance on natural resources. And this becomes a threat to the park because people are over-reliant on natural resources. However, even at that, the park is working with the communities in order to find solutions to the threats, in order to find solutions to better their livelihoods.
And how can you see progress already so that the livelihoods of the local communities are rising through the work in the park?
Yes, I can see progress because we are launching some projects in the park for the communities. Our organization is working with the communities in launching livelihood projects that are bettering the lives of the people that are staying in the communities. So yeah, in the near future, we'll see a change.
What if you say to make a better life, to progress, to contain progress and livelihoods? What is it concretely? Is it education or is it giving jobs to them? What really can a park do for the local people?
It is all that. We're giving education and we're giving financial support as well. And also myself, I'm part of the community and I'm employed here. So I'm directly benefiting from the park and also my other colleagues that are from the local communities that are employed here. So I would say, yeah, it's all that, as you've rightly said it.
And can you see a difference between the approach of older people from the communities and younger people in the communities to the work of the park? So I hope that you will answer that younger people admire the work of the park more than older people do.
Of course. Most of our employees here are young. And they're older people, of course, they're just supporting us. But most of us here, we are young people. We are so enthusiastic to be working for the park, and we are so enthusiastic to be running with the activities that are happening in the communities as well. So yeah, the young people are running the show.
Yeah, I hope that it's the only way to run the show, the young people. So can you share some unforgettable moments of your work in the park with us? Because I know you have rhinos and I would love to see them there.
Well, not yet. There are many activities that have been going on that are memorable, but I would say the most memorable one, which I'm so excited to be a part of, is the reintroduction of the black rhino into Gonarezhou National Park. It has been extinct for the past 27 years, and we've been working towards the reintroduction of this species amongst all our other species. So I'm excited to be part of the team that is working to fulfill this memorable.
Thank you so much, Prudence. And you know, I'm really excited. I see you sitting there in Zimbabwe in that wonderful landscape. I'm standing here on that frozen part of the planet. So it's good to see you, and I hope we will meet soon in Zimbabwe. So have a nice day.
Thank you so much.
Joining. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to introduce two high-ranking representatives of the United Kingdom and France to you. First, Lord Goldsmith. He's the UK Minister of State for the Pacific and Environment. The United Kingdom and Germany are both very strong supporters of international nature conservation programs. And they're currently exploring new ways to cooperate and to join their efforts, which is, in my opinion, a very good idea. And then we have the French ambassador for the environment, Jan Wehrling. France will support the Legacy Landscapes Fund financially beginning already next year.
On behalf of the United Kingdom, I'm delighted to congratulate Germany on the Legacy Landscapes Fund. Investing public and private support into nature provides extraordinary dividends and helps us address so many of the most serious global challenges that we face. That's why we've put nature at the heart of our presidencies, both of the G7 and COP26. And we fully agree that long-term commitment to conservation at scale can be truly game-changing for the world's most critically important environments and the communities that rely directly upon them. So we're launching a new £100 million Biodiverse Landscapes Fund to connect, protect and restore at least 5 huge transboundary ecosystems, providing safe passage for wildlife and green jobs for people, as well as a new £500 million Blue Planet Fund, helping coastal communities defend the fragile marine ecosystems on which they depend from a multitude of threats. And of course, none of us can say we're doing enough, and all of us must ramp up our efforts. But if we do, I have no doubt that we can reset our relationship with the natural world. Thank you very much.
Germany and France are part of the Ambition Coalition for Nature and People launched at the One Planet Summit in 2021. The objective is to support the adoption of a target aiming to protect 30% of the planet's land and oceans by 2030 in the future global framework of the Convention on Biological Diversity. We share the same ambition with the German corporation and consider it necessary to have a new tool to finance preservation of biodiversity and heritage landscapes. The Legacy Landscape Fund, supported by BMZ and KfW, and in which we were involved since its inception, is a global and strategic initiative particularly relevant to conserve biodiversity. It will enable the financing of emblematic protected areas in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. It relies on international and national conservation NGOs whose actions have a significant impact on the preservation of nature with the respect of the indigenous peoples. It supports national authorities in the countries where it operates to better ensure the conservation of their natural heritage, habitats, and threatened species. We subscribe to this initiative because we consider that it is necessary to set up a partnership tool for financing protected areas that combines the investment capacities of donors but also philanthropic foundations that play a major role in financing conservation. At the One Planet Summit on the 11th of January, President Emmanuel Macron announced that France would make a contribution to the Legacy Landscape Fund. We are working to be part and supportive of this initiative with a financial contribution from France in 2022. I thank you.
Targeting $1 billion as the base for the work of the LLF. This is a very big fund, and the question rises, how does it work? So please, let's talk about the mechanisms of the Legacy Landscapes Fund and who is actually behind it. I would love to introduce to you the Executive Director, Stefanie Lang. Welcome to Germany.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you. I'm happy.
Stefanie, I see you're sitting in the same rainforest as the minister.
Yes, that's just by accident.
That's by accident, okay.
We are sharing the same vision, so that's good,
okay.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Manaus.
And sitting in the same forest. So, Stefanie, what makes the LLF so special? I think it's a new idea of protection.
Yes, indeed. It's a new dimension of protection because for the first time we are working in a broad partnership, not only when it comes to funders of the funds, we're working with private sector donors, with philanthropists, and with public sector donors jointly. But we are also working in a broad partnership when it comes to beneficiaries. We are working with experienced international NGOs that have long-term and trusted relationships with the park administrations and with the local populations around the parks. And we are also, of course, including the governments of those parks to take ownership for the long-term survival and for the long-term security of these protected areas. So we are working in a very strong partnership approach that makes it very exciting. The second thing that is new is that we are not talking about one project or one program that might last for 3 years or for 5 years. This is normally the time span we talk about in conservation. I come from a conservation organization. I have seen how stressful this is, because once you start your activities, you almost have to think already, what do we do afterwards? How do we ensure the sustainability? This has been remedied with this Legacy Landscape Fund, because we're talking about a 15-year funding security and a vision to go beyond the 15 years. And 15 years gives us the security to think of eternity, to think of perpetuity, and to think of funding mechanisms that secure these areas forever. And this is exciting. And this is a big relief for everybody who works in conservation, to be able to do their work with the security that it needs to keep the boots on the ground, to keep the lights on, to keep the batteries in the monitoring cameras, to keep the people fed that work for the park, and not to worry about those permanent costs. How can we fund those costs? So this is why I'm very excited that we have this idea now.
Protecting biodiversity for eternity, that's a very nice headline. But in fact, you just mentioned it, there's enough money for just 15 years. How do you want to go on after that?
Yes. Well, 15 years is a long time already when we look at conservation. And in 15 years, the world can change. And we have seen now changes to the negative, unfortunately, with the complete loss of tourism income for many of those parks. But we will see the world relapsing again and coming back, and tourists coming back, hopefully. We will overcome this corona crisis jointly. So I think after the 15 years, and in those 15 years, we will find targeted models for each of the sites, to have basket funds or to have endowment funds. So the Legacy Landscape Fund, as Minister Müller has said already, we are targeting a $1 billion fund that is both sinking fund and endowment fund. And if we achieve that, we can have enough money to secure 30 landscapes for eternity through our endowment. So this is the goal. And we want to work together with others, and we want to also use the endowment to build tailor-made funding models for each park that attract other funding models as well. Payment for ecosystem services, RED or CO2 funding, tourism income, and other income sources that benefit the park, but also, and very importantly, the people around the park, to secure livelihoods as much as we secure the existence of the park.
Being the executive director, you're in fact the one who has to pay the bills. How much money do you have in your pocket right now?
Oh, yes. Well, if I would have that privately, I would be very happy. And I would probably be in a helicopter over a beautiful landscape. No, but at the moment we have already, thanks to the German government and thanks to the Betty Moore Foundation, we have already $100 million. And this allows us to start with 7 pilot sites. And this allows us to secure 15-year funding for those 7 pilot sites, which is a great start. But we are aiming for more, obviously. If we want to get to 100 million, we need about 1 billion. We need to get around 100 million each year. So now we have the first 100 million, thanks to the German government and our partners, but we need to attract more money. And I'm very happy to hear that France is joining in, and I'm very happy to have some interested parties, both from private sector, from corporates, but also from other governments who want to join. Because with the 7 pilot sites, this is just the start, but we intend to do more, and we would like to have 30 sites at least in the end.
So there are 2 numbers on the table. 30 sites you want to protect, 7 are already chosen, right? And yes. Which one are these?
We have at the moment, the negotiation is on with 7 pilot sites. They will be finally decided by the end of this year by our supervisory board, and we are now scrutinizing them for environmental and social due diligence. So meaning, are these sites working well? What are the risks? How can we tackle those risks? And the sites are, one is in Latin America, it's Madidi in Bolivia. Which is a fantastic site because it reaches from the high altitude of the Andes down. So it has an incredible biodiversity and very diverse biodiversity. Then we move over to Asia. We have 2 sites in Asia. One is the Loisa ecosystem in Sumatra in Indonesia. This is a site where we find all the specific and very rare species of Indonesia in one park. So that is the rhino, the orangutan, and the tiger, which is very rare. So I'm excited to have this site as well in our portfolio. Then we have Cardamom Mountains in Cambodia, and this is the oldest national park in Cambodia, one of the last remaining forest ecosystems in Cambodia. And then we have 4 sites in Africa, 2 in East Africa. One is northern Luangwa in Zambia. This is a very special site because it is extremely wild and it has been a very untouched site so far. And we have what we saw in Gonarezhou, we saw it with Prudence, we have Gonarezhou National Park in Zimbabwe. And again, this is the place where the elephants are. This is also specifically interesting also to see how elephants, African elephants, in abundance and in such a protection state. And then we have 2 sites. The last 2 sites are in Central Africa. So one is in the Republic of Congo, so in the Congo Basin, the African lungs of the planet, basically. It's Odzala National Park. And we have one site that is also special in Angola. It's Ilona National Park, because this is the only dry savanna park that we have at the moment in our portfolio.
And here we are back again. Sorry, we had some technical problems, but now we are back. Stephanie, one more question from the Arctic right to you. I know you've been involved with the WWF for many, many years. Yes. Which other NGO, and we both know how important it is to involve NGOs into environmental protection work. Which NGOs are on your list?
Well, at the moment we have the pilot sites. They have been suggested by NGOs. And at the moment we're working with African parks. We're working with Conservation International, we're working with the WCS, and we're working with the Zoological Gesellschaft Frankfurt, ZGF. So these are the NGOs that are now working with us for the pilot phase. But as soon as we can have the call for proposals, we invite other NGOs to join, other experienced NGOs, but also smaller NGOs or even community-based bodies to work with us jointly to protect the areas and the landscape that are around.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yes.
It's a pretty impressive list of NGOs, and I think it's a good moment to hear some voices from NGOs and other partners.
Thank you.
Hello, it's a pleasure to join you, albeit virtually. To start, let me thank Minister Muller and the German government for the opportunity to join you. For far too long, the biodiversity crisis has been seen as separate from climate change. But the loss of nature and the diversity of life on this planet in extraordinary amounts is a part of the climate crisis. We cannot stem the global decline in biodiversity without limiting the rise in global temperatures, nor can we reach our climate goals without reversing the decline in nature.
Through the UNESCO World Heritage Convention, 194 countries took a solemn commitment to protect our common heritage of humankind and to ensure its transmission to future generations.
Protected areas have no half-life. They are designed to last forever. They are our legacy and future investments. It is therefore critical to make protected areas safe from funding cuts so that they can exist in perpetuity.
La gestión territorial tacana es una alternativa para la reducción de la deforestación. Nuestra participación en la gestión del área a través de la planificación, monitoreo, acciones conjuntas para responder a amenazas junto a los guardaparques, y también a través de la promoción de modelos de desarrollo que mantienen los ecosistemas naturales, como el ecoturismo, es esencial para mantener la integridad del paisaje madidi. Por eso es importante que los fondos de permanencia, como el de paisajes, de patrimonio, consideren acciones de apoyo a los pueblos indígenas.
ខ្ញុំធ្វើការការពារតំបន់មួយនេះអស់រយៈពេល7ឆ្នាំមកហើយបច្ចុប្បន្នតំបន់នេះទទួលរងនូវកត្តាគំរាមកំហែងធំៗដូចជាការជួសជុលដីព្រៃរបស់រដ្ឋយកធ្វើជាកម្មសិទ្ធិបម្រើការងារកសិកម្មពីការបរបាញ់សត្វព្រៃខុសច្បាប់និងទី3ការកាប់ឈើខុសច្បាប់ការងារអនុវត្តច្បាប់ពិតជាមានសារៈសំខាន់ខ្លាំងណាស់ក្នុងការការពារតំបន់មួយនេះប៉ុន្តែយើងក៏ត្រូវការចំណាយច្រើនណាស់ដែរដូច្នេះយើងត្រូវការពឹងផ្អែកទៅលើដៃគូអភិរក្សដូចជាអង្គការអភិរក្សអន្តរជាតិ CI ជាដើមដើម្បីជួយខ្ញុំពិតជាមានចិត្តរំភើបនៃលទ្ធភាពដែលទទួលបានហិរញ្ញប្បទានរយៈពេលវែងតាមរយៈមូលនិធិទេសភាពកេរដំណែលវានឹងអាចជួយឲ្យពួកយើងធានាបាននូវការការពារតំបន់មួយនេះដល់មនុស្សជាតិជំនាន់ក្រោយបន្តទៅទៀត
My name is Chakanga. I'm Handra. I work in North Luangwa National Parks and I love my job very much because it's helped us to arrest the poachers and it's a source of income and employment. This job has helped me a lot because I'm a breadwinner in my family. I help my sister and my brother to go to school because of this job. Yeah, and I help my mom to buy food, to buy clothes for her. Yeah, that too.
Conservation has changed my life because I was just in the community doing nothing, but conservation has given me an opportunity to start working, and the most important I can say, it provides jobs to the local people, and it is also promoting ladies to join conservation.
Legacy Landscapes is a unique opportunity at a unique time to offer us funding in perpetuity for wildlife spaces. COVID-19 in 2020 was a difficult year, but no more difficult or challenging than years or decades before. Trying to keep these areas wild and free for future generations is a hard job at any time, but Legacy Landscapes offers us a future for the future of the planet.
One of the major challenges which we have in conservation is being able to secure long-term funding. And having long-term funding allows us to keep our boots on the ground and also to be able to implement modern technology and modern systems in our work. Having the boots on the ground, which is a traditional method, and also being able to implement modern systems and adding my role to the work helps us not only to be effective, but makes us more efficient in our conservation work.
The work we do here is not only protecting, we're also, together with the local communities and the government, trying to find ways of sustainably managing our resources. And for this, a long-term financial security is of uttermost importance. And it will be funding as the Legacy Landscapes that could help us achieve this goal.
The NGO that has been the lead NGO spearheading in terms of conserving our wildlife resource in the North Luangwa National Park, and would love them to extend further north. Therefore, the Legacy Landscape Fund will be key for the sustenance and for the improvement and continuous sustainable tourism activities in the North Luangwa Park.
Natural World Heritage Sites include some of the largest and most intact significant conserved areas on Earth, 8% of the global area of all protected areas, and a roll call of many of the household names of conservation. We hope to see many of these, along with other significant protected areas, also profit from the LLF, which offers us a new in perpetuity way of doing business, bringing a sense of security beyond the normal ebb and flow of project cycles to really underpin the essential needs of these special places.
The Legacy Landscape Fund is an innovative, strong global instrument that brings private and public donors together, as well as NGOs and national authorities. This fund finally gives protected areas a future perspective, and for us, a future with a healthy planet.
Nature is currently our best line of defense against the climate crisis, with the ocean and forests providing nearly all of our carbon removal. They have taken the heat, literally, for decades, and they've suffered the consequences. The good news is that when given the chance, nature often recovers. As we invest more in nature, placing it at the heart of addressing the climate crisis, we have an opportunity to recover species and slow the rise in global temperatures. From ecosystem restoration and conservation to sustainable agriculture and aquaculture, nature-based solutions are an essential part of how countries around the world need to address the climate crisis. Much like the climate crisis, you can't tackle the biodiversity crisis alone. To be successful, we need close multilateral cooperation to combat climate change and to stop biodiversity decline. This year presents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with two major conferences due to take place in Glasgow and Kunming. A new course is going to be charted, a pathway for a critical decade of action, a decade where countries will not only need to increase their ambition and bend the curve on emissions, but also on extinctions. We must, all of us, do more to support the potential for a healthy, thriving planet for people and for nature. I look forward to working with you all.
We need to protect these places because these landscapes are the lungs of the world.
Thanks to all the NGOs and partners. And now I would love to introduce two very inspiring women to you, Elizabeth Marimer and Patricia Espinoza. Hello, can you hear me? Are you there? Yeah, I see you. Wonderful. Yes. So, Elizabeth, the title of your organization is very long. I have to read it from my paper. You're Executive Secretary of the Secretariat of the Convention of Biological Diversity. Let's just call it UNCBD. That makes it much easier for all of us. Elizabeth, to stop the fast destruction of our livelihoods, we have to overcome, at the same time, the biodiversity and the climate crisis. We have to overcome them together. And what do you think? Can you explain to us how these two crises are connected?
Thank you very much, Dick. First, let me acknowledge how delighted I am to be here and joined also or together with Patricia to address these intertwined challenges of biodiversity loss and climate change. And I believe, I hope whatever we'll talk, she will also be agreeable, but if not, it's good also to know, since you have already, Dick, indicated they're intertwined. I'll be very surprised if her assessment will be different. Anyway, climate change and degradation of our natural environment or biodiversity loss have many issues in common. These are crises which share the same origin, but like also similar solutions. Science has clearly indicated that these crises must be addressed in one interconnected problem with linked solutions. And if we look from the origins of the point of view, we know that our human actions are the basis for all the challenges we face today or before us, be it climate change, deforestation, land use change, and sustainable agriculture, including livestock production, illegal wildlife trade. All these are as the result of human actions. And furthermore, if we look at marine biodiversity, it is affected by ocean acidification related to the levels of carbon in the atmosphere. And this in turn affects the species and the people in different ways, from the health of the entire marine ecosystems, the food systems, the local livelihood, and countries' economies. And if we look at the terrestrial biodiversity, including species and ecosystems, all are also influenced by climate vulnerability, such as extreme weather conditions. All these have a direct influence on ecosystems' health, ecosystem goods and services upon which all of us depend on. The impact, for instance, on pollinators have well been studied, especially in Europe. Another important common point is that the consequences of these crises are felt by all people, and those particularly most vulnerable, marginalized group bearing the biggest burden, creating inequity and socioeconomic complexities. We have seen with the COVID-19 pandemic how the human cost from microscopic zoonotic disease has been incredibly significant, whether we are talking about climate change or we are talking about biodiversity loss. Let's look also at the shifting the course away from unsustainable pathways to a greener, more resilient, diversity abundant, low carbon sustainable future. All this connects the two agendas: better conservation, restoration, and management of ecosystems will produce a carbon cycle that can lead to a balanced regulation of the Earth's climate. IPBS, or Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, suggests that restoring natural lands and preventing their destruction could deliver more than a third of the actions needed by 2030 to keep the global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius. This all will require a combination of coordinated national, territorial, and community actions that are strategically targeting to deliver the dual outputs. One, for instance, when we look at the restoration agenda, for example, it will be critical to apply a strategy for spatial planning to identify, conserve, restore, and protect climate resilient habitats. Two, if we will need proper public policies and funding to address the systemic changes in different geographies and communities to ensure proper restoration of species and locations with governance and safeguard models to ensure biodiversity abundance and resilience is valued and accounted towards the overall goals. So we want to—
Elizabeth, may I interrupt you for a second? It's really inspiring to hear how passionate you can explain these issues. But I have, as a presenter and host today, I have to keep an eye on the watch. So I will come back to you later, I promise. But I have another very important question to Patricia. And Patricia is, her title is as impressive as Elizabeth. Her title is Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, shortly UNFCCC. Patricia, I know that you know Gerd Müller for a very long time. And we're heading toward the next conference of the parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It is planned to take place in Glasgow, I think, next year. In your opinion, what opportunities do we have out of the COP26 to enhance policy alignment and accelerate implementations in a way that, I mean, really drives meaningful climate and biodiversity action?
Thank you, Dirk. And let me start by acknowledging my profound gratitude to Minister Müller for his commitment, for his dedication, for his leadership. And the launching today of this extraordinary fund is only one more of his many, many contributions. So thank you, dear Minister. We are really very, very thankful. And let me also say that I can start. My task is quite easy now after having listened to Elizabeth, because I fully agree with you, Elizabeth. It is a fact that biodiversity and climate change, as well as land and oceans, are crucially linked, and that we cannot consider any of them in isolation. Formally, the importance of biodiversity protection is also expressly recognized in the Paris Agreement. A healthy ecosystem usually stores a lot of carbon, as you rightly were mentioning. Those ecosystems are highly resilient and have a great amount of biodiversity. So any upsetting of this careful balance is always bad news. It's a deadly chain reaction. Often, the first step to biodiversity loss causes significant greenhouse gas emissions and leads to climate change and impacts human health and so much more. It's a fact that Mother Nature does not work in a silo, nor should the way that we work within the United Nations, within governments, or even tackle these interconnected issues related to biodiversity throughout society. We, Elizabeth, you and me and our other sister convention from UNCCD, Convention on Desertification, we are trying to work much more closer together. Why? Because this is actually one agenda. And we need to acknowledge that this is not a business or government issue or a developed or developing nations issue. It's an issue that impacts all of humanity and is therefore up to all of humanity to address. So the Paris Agreement gives us tools in order to address all these challenges. Of course, we are expecting a very successful outcome at COP26 in Glasgow. And it's going to be covering many, many aspects. One of them that is very relevant for this conversation is the work regarding agriculture and forestry sectors. There, we will continue to push for more ambition within the Coronivia joint work on agriculture, which is what we are doing within our process. But in general, finance for adaptation, finance for climate action, all of those issues that will be part of the agenda of the conference are absolutely relevant for biodiversity.
Thank you, Patricia. And Elizabeth, please stay with us and let's include again Minister Müller into our discussion. Gerd, can you hear me again? And
yes, of course.
We've just heard about the importance of protected areas for biodiversity conservation, and at the same time, what makes it even more complicated, for climate protection. So we have to fight at two sides at the same time. They also contribute significantly to the Sustainable Development Goals. In your view, what should be done? What can governments do?
Thank you so much, Dirk. We can see and we can hear you, and we are a little bit concerned about your red nose in Spitsbergen. What's going on?
Yeah, we have a lot of reindeers here, as you know, and it's very cold.
Yeah. Good. Thank you all for your inspiring speeches. It's really great. I would like to thank all participants, the donors, the friends, the activists, supporters, and especially Patricia and Elizabeth for your great work and your commitment. And I'm sure we will see you. We will see each other in Glasgow and in Kunming. I hope it's possible personally to be there. And we all agree nature protection and climate protection must be at the top of the global agenda, Patricia, at the top. Therefore, we have to move from talk to proper action in the next month. Glasgow, Kunming. We also talked about this at the last negotiations with the Chinese government 14 days ago here in Berlin. And the question is, and our plan, building back better. That is the slogan. After pandemic, what we need is a green recovery, And what we need is a new global framework for biodiversity. I think a framework like the Paris Agreement for climate. And that must happen in Kunming with the Chinese government. They are very, very important in this field. And it needs to be a truly global agreement. To achieve this, we need practical partnerships like this Legacy Landscape Fund, which brings together governments, NGOs, enterprises, foundations, scientists, and civil societies. And therefore, thank you at this point. Again, thanks to all of you for your great support. And many thanks to Dirk at this wonderful place in Spitsbergen. The question is, what's a better place, Spitsbergen or the Zimbabwean National Park?
Right now, I would love to be in Zimbabwe because my nose is freezing off.
Okay, best regards and thank all of you.
Thank you, Gerd. All the best. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the launch of the Legacy Landscapes Fund, a very international launch event, in my opinion, and that suits what we are talking about because protecting biodiversity is an international, a global task, and no country and no organization can fulfill these challenges alone. So thank you for joining us and have a good day. Bye-bye from the Arctic.